Hi, my name is Sandy Baird, and we're here to talk about what's happening locally and also nationally. The most current incident, I guess, or the most current well-publicized event is the election of Donald Trump as our future president of the United States. And we're here to make comments on that and figure out exactly what happened and why. And with me today are old friends of mine, John Franco, who is I guess, as you call it, a pain in the ass, right?
Professional pain in the ass.
A professional pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I'm Sandy Baird, who tries not to be, but often am the same thing. And also here we are with Steve Goodkind as well. And we're all friends, although we fight all the time. So John is here to comment on the recent elections.
Well, you're going to kick it off with your comments about the election.
No, I'm not. I thought you were going to see the fight starts already.
I'll kick it off.
Stephen can kick it off.
Okay, good.
I think it's not a secret anymore what people think happened, but I would say that looking back in hindsight, I got to admit I was drinking the Kool-Aid also. I thought Harris would do much better. But I think the headwind she was against really say something about America. First, she was a woman. Second, she was a black woman. Third, she was Biden's vice president. And those three things, I think, just sunk her. And I don't know if she would have been a good president or not. I think better than Trump's going to be. But I think looking back on it, there wasn't enough time. And probably, even if she'd had much more time, I think those things, the public is pretty strong on those things. I think especially Biden was a big anchor. You know, his legacy, even though he may have done things that he thinks were really good, the public doesn't know it, and that was a huge anchor. So I think that's just, in summary, that's what I think happened. She was up against a headwind that was just too much and no time to deal with it. It almost looked like it was a good thing at first that she only had 100 days. In hindsight, it was a disaster. There was no time to really separate herself from anything else that was of those three anchors that were going to weigh her down. So that's my summary of what I think happened.
Okay, John.
I basically agree. There was the best. I've read all this postmortems on the Democratic side. Most of them make me vomit.
Why is that?
The corporate Democrats and she should have done this and she should have done that. For one thing, in terms of her campaign, the analogy I use is that nobody pitches a perfect game, but she pitched a pretty good game.
Yeah, good campaign.
She was a good campaign. She was a good candidate. She had a good personality. I love her as a former prosecutor. She can't be president. I want her as my attorney. I got to tell you, the woman is freaking brilliant as a litigator. The problem is that happened, and everybody's going, this is great. This new coalition has been put together by Donald Trump that includes Latinos and African American men. And it's just so wonderful, except that statistics number one, the popular vote doesn't bear that out. Donald Trump got almost exactly the same popular vote in 2024 that he got when he was defeated by Joe Biden. Yeah. Biden got 81 million votes in 2020, he got 74. What happened this round, and keep in mind this is with the caveat that some of the returns from California and some of these states aren't entirely finalized yet. He still has 74 million popular votes, the same that he had in 2020. The problem was Harris's vote dropped from the 81 million that Biden got to 71 million. That's a drop in turnout.
Yeah.
That's a drop in Democratic turnout. Mm-hmm. So you hear all these, all these pundits about what happened. One of the other best ones I heard, I think it was run yesterday, they said that politics is like curling. It's the sport of curling where they throw the rock down the ice. And they said you have the skip which throws the rock, and then you have the people with the broom that try to direct it. And they said politics is like that. They said the basic rock is what was happening with inflation and with people's dissatisfaction with Biden, and particularly with wars in Ukraine and in Israel.
Gaza.
And his analysis was, doesn't matter whatever the skips tried to do to try to change or affect the direction of the rock, it was, as Stephen said, the basic headwind. I think fundamentally, and there was a very good article in the New York Times that covered the reaction at Howard University the night of the election and then the postmortem when she resigned, and how the reaction of African American women. And they said they saw it. They said it was too good to be true, and it turned out to be too good to be true. One of the main reasons why she's had that 10 million vote drop is because she was an African American woman. Mm-hmm. I don't think this guy, convicted rapist, federal 34 federal, yes, rapist. civilly.
Okay, but that's not convicted.
Well,
please.
but adjudicated rapist.
Okay, if that's the case.
Convicted felon I mean, you name it. The campaign he ran, the Madison Square Garden thing, was right out of the Nazi rallies in Madison Square Garden in 1939. And they were making no bones about it. And then there are some of these pundits that say, well, you know, you shouldn't have campaigned on democracy. Well, you know what happens if you don't campaign on democracy? You normalize all that. You say, well, that's okay. We're not even going to talk about it. What the hell kind of a message is that? We're not going to talk about it. And then Kamala shouldn't have talked about it.
Yeah.
She did talk about it, but she didn't talk about that alone. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was, well, you shouldn't have made a common cause with Republicans who oppose what Trump is doing in terms of democracy. Well, let me tell you something. One of the reasons Hitler went to power in 1933 was that people that opposed Hitler fought against one another. Stalin had this frickin' notion that the communists couldn't ally with the socialists because they were social fascists, and so they all fought against each other. Same thing happened in the Spanish Civil War, and what happened? You had Franco, not one of my relatives, but you had Franco.
Francisco.
You had Hitler. It was Francisco.
Franco,
I'm Italian,
please.
he was Spanish.
Right.
So that criticism, I think, is total BS. The problem is, another really good article, it was an op-ed piece that was in the Times that said, it's time to stop pretending that Donald Trump is something other than what America is really about. And it's just, unfortunately, with a good half of the population, Donald Trump represents exactly what America is all about. It's the racism and the misogyny and the eating the cats. And they said, oh, Donald Trump had such a great message on the economy. Like frickin' what? Oh, the price of eggs are too high. Bring the price of eggs down. Well, is anybody with any elementary notion of economics in a capitalist economy, you know how you bring the price of eggs in 2020 down to where they 2024 down to where they were in 2020? You have a Great Depression with 40% unemployment. You want that? I mean, one of the miracles that happened, I'm not a big fan of the Federal Reserve, but we had the so-called soft landing where they brought the rate of inflation down without a major recession, which a lot of conservatives, including conservative Democratic economists like Larry Summers, were saying would have had to happen. There would have had to have been 3 years of pain and 3 years of recession and blah, 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 blah.
But remember, the rate of recession is down. The prices are still there.
Yeah,
though.
but what I'm saying
prices
is
didn't go back. They just didn't increase anymore.
Donald Trump is not going to be a remedy to any of that.
Probably not.
Probably not. What the fuck's he going to do?
Hey, that's obscene. You can't talk like that on the air.
Okay.
Well,
what's he going to do?
You're going to have to be edited.
It's unclear, but you know how things sort of go. He's going to do some stuff. It could be really bad stuff, but I predict that initially a lot of stuff's going to go his way, and then it's going to turn and it's going to be a disaster. But I think initially he's going to do some stuff, and some positive things will probably, for some people, not for everybody. Some awful things are going to happen, but it's going to be good for a year or two, and then it's going to go horrendously bad. That's what I think.
If he imposes the tariffs you're talking about major inflation, potentially triggering a recession for starters.
Hey, that's an if. Let's talk about really what other people think about what happened, okay? I don't know what he's going to do, frankly. Some of it signals bad stuff to me, particularly because I love Cuba and I want decent relations with Cuba. So I'm concerned that Marco Rubio has now been declared Secretary of State.
Not a friend of Cuba.
Not a friend of Cuba. He's
a
Florida Cuba.
Yeah.
He's a white Cuban in this country who has continue to try to punish Cuba for having a socialist government. I'm very worried about Marco Rubio. However, I don't really know what Trump's going to do. However, I think I do have a different view of why the Democrats lost. And that's what I'm going to talk about. I think they lost because in my view, and many Americans' view, the Biden administration has been a disaster for most Americans. I agree with you. She could not fight that.
Couldn't get away from it.
Because she's the vice president, for God's sakes.
I
knew. I didn't vote for either. I voted for Jill Stein. I knew that whatever policies that the Biden administration had put into place would continue with her. And remember what she said? She was asked at a panel discussion what you would do differently on The View. And you know what she said?
Couldn't think of anything.
Gee whiz, I can't think of any. Okay, my main objection to the Biden administration has been deep and consistent. They started new wars. That led to inflation. They spent too much money on the military. You guys say, well, Trump will be worse. I don't know. To me, one of the worst things that ever has happened to this country was the Biden administration. And she was too closely connected to that. That's why I think she lost. And if you look at the people who voted or didn't vote, didn't even come out and vote. Remember that.
Yeah.
Huge amounts, because they didn't want to make that choice.
Yeah, and I just say I don't think Biden was that bad, but he just wasn't good enough. That
He
his
was,
problem.
but I don't even know what he was, one way or another. He shut down the economy during COVID. Most people suffered from that. I did.
Well, aren't we talking about an
That
overlap?
revisionist history.
No.
Donald Trump was president during the first
You
year.
bet
of COVID.
your life,
It was
but who-
wait.
That's when it
It was
started.
under Donald
Yeah.
Trump that all the social safety net stuff that went in under
Yeah.
COVID, including
So Biden had started.
including the child care tax credit, including all these aid to businesses and so
I
forth
just
and so on,
said-
was under Donald Trump.
Okay.
Under Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who said, "Oh, the cure for COVID is go drink some Clorox or inject it in your veins." I mean, the guy was
Take your pick.
a complete idiot.
I said something about the 2 years that Biden or longer has been in power. He was in power during most of the COVID disaster. Not only that, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm mainly talking about that the Biden administration started 2 new wars that are going to turn into World War III.
He didn't start the war in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin
I
started
know,
the war in Ukraine.
I know that, but
He didn't start the war in Gaza.
okay. Then he approved millions of dollars from our budget to go to weapons to Zelensky, and they did it again recently.
In
So,
a bipartisan
okay.
effort with the Republicans.
Okay, so that's what I think. And,
bipartisan effort
one
with
of
the
the things
Republicans. And in terms
Trump
of what he did-
promised, one of the things that Trump promised, I don't think he's going to do it because it's too damn controversial, is he says he's going to make peace with Ukraine the next day he's in power. I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
He'll cram down a peace settlement with him. That's going to happen.
Well, that's fine with me, I'm telling you. Because Russia is not going to be beaten by all the weapons in the world that the United States gives to them, to the Zelensky. Okay, that was a war that became a new war under Joe Biden. Now, I am an anti-war person in general. So that was the reason I could not vote. But the big thing is I could not vote for him or her is because of what's happened in Gaza. There's no way that I would vote for any administration that was condoning and fueling weapons which are causing a genocide. I said that over and over, and I think most Americans are sick of it too.
Well, but they didn't vote for
We don't
Jill
know
Stein
why.
either, though.
No,
so
I
we
know
don't know
that.
what they're.
They didn't vote.
Looks like. What would, just for curiosity, what do you think should have happened in Ukraine?
In Ukraine?
Yeah.
I think that, there's a whole history of it.
Well-
So I'll go into the history of it rather than say what I think should have happened. The history was that Vladimir Putin has a red line. No NATO. Ukraine was not to join NATO. There was all this noise made by Zelensky and by the EU and by NATO that they were going to join NATO. That was the red line. Putin said no.
And so everything that's happened since then is justified by that.
I didn't say that.
Well, what would you have
I'm
done?
talking about facts. I don't know what I'd have done. I'm not saying that. I'm saying about what happened only. And I was not into new wars. I'm not into wars against Russia. I'm not into wars against Ukraine. I'm not into wars against the Palestinian people. And I believe that was a big reason that most Americans did not even choose between the two.
And Trump will turn out to be even a bigger hawk.
You might be right.
A bigger hawk.
You might be right.
Netanyahu went back.
You might be right.
I think when Trump was running in 2015 before he was elected.
Yep.
Netanyahu, I think, was in New York, may have gone to the UN and actually stayed with the Trumps and is friends
It could
with the
be.
Trumps.
It could be. You're right,
You
John.
know, it's
Maybe.
like.
Doesn't make me moved to have made that choice.
Well, but that doesn't explain why. To me, that's not a satisfactory explanation of why.
Oh,
Harris
too bad.
lost.
You know?
And you're saying, well, you thought his
get it.
policies
I know.
were a disaster in terms of his economic,
Right.
in terms
No,
of,
I
in
didn't
terms
say
of what
that.
he's done with the National Labor
I didn't
Relations
say
Board,
that.
in terms of what he's done with unions,
Yeah.
in terms of some of the domestic policies that he got through. One of the things you've got to keep in mind is he did pretty good with the hand he was dealt. He had a
This.
Biden,
Oh,
he
yeah.
had a split Senate. He had what's-his-face in West Virginia, and the other senator, these were nominally Democrats in Arizona, who were voting with the Republicans. He didn't have a functioning majority in the U.S. Senate. And he still got some of these programs through. That was a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah,
and it wasn't everything that he wanted to do. It was maybe a half or a quarter of what he wanted to do.
Steve can comment on
I
that.
think, and again, I think the problem is they claim that he was the greatest president, at least the first 2 years,
Who?
got more legislation through than anybody.
Biden?
Well, when you say that, that's my answer.
Yeah.
no one knows. It's all this inside baseball stuff they did, stuff that doesn't come to fruition for 3 or 4 more years.
Well,
they did all this stuff, but the average unwashed public out there doesn't know what the hell he did, and it's not helping them.
And it'll be all done by Trump.
It didn't help them.
Well, it might be undone or no benefit by it.
Forget it. You think that we know what the NLRB is going to look like under Trump? Forget it.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying what Biden did was and I think the same thing happened in the state of Vermont. The Democrats are doing stuff, but it doesn't register with anyone that
There's another
they don't
whole
realize
issue,
that it's
though.
helping them or not helping them. And I think that's why people either stay away or some of the younger people say, well, look, you're not doing Biden's not doing anything for me. And he might be doing a lot of things for them. They just don't know. So they try Trump. Trump has changed.
It's now too late.
So all the stuff they did was not something they could explain or show or make people understand that we did this for you, because none of it has come to fruition. The only people that got benefited by it, like the whole thing with the energy thing that's part of that, it was not an anti-inflation, but yeah. And there's lots of, that's probably benefiting mostly. It's mostly benefiting people that have money and own houses. That's who it's benefiting. The average schmo that's out there, and they say 70% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, they don't get anything out of that.
But there's another whole thing that we're not talking about.
So it's a big, don't say that was a big thing they did, and maybe a good thing, but most people don't, it doesn't affect them at all, not directly. And it's stuff like that that I think gets people thinking, well, maybe Trump will do better.
The $64 question is, what is it more that he could have done that would have gotten through the United States Senate? The answer is...
Oh, I'm not saying he could have.
Nothing. And then Trump gets out there and says, well, you failed. Let me give you what's on the horizon now with our good friend Mr. Trump and what he's going to do. The biggest thing, their big initiative is immigration. Mm-hmm. And he says they're going to arrest and they're going to deport 14 million illegal immigrants in the United States. Well, let's have a little bit of historic perspective on this. You know how many people the Germans rounded up during the Holocaust and World War II in Germany? 6 million. So you're going to have a roundup of illegal aliens in the United States that's twice the size of the Holocaust. Do you think this country's really going to stand for that?
Well, I suspect...
Probably they would.
Here's what I suspect is going to happen. I don't think he's going to do that right away. But I think what he's going to do, they're going to make a big thing out of it. They're going to find criminals.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's many of them or not, but whatever there are, they're going to find them. And they're going to make a big thing of getting rid of them. That's step one. All of a sudden people are saying, oh, that's not so bad. And it'll come in steps. But I bet you the first thing will be not rounding up 10 million people. It'll be rounding up 10,000 people that are criminals. And everyone will say, good riddance.
Right, but there's another whole category they say they're going to round up. I don't know how they're going to find these people. The second category they say they're going to work on are people who have already been under a deportation order.
Correct.
Those aren't criminals. Those are just people who lost their asylum case.
But I think it'll come in steps, and I'm not saying it's good either. But that's how it'll come. It won't be 10 million at once, and you'll get people saying, "Oh, that wasn't so bad," and maybe this isn't so bad, and then all of a sudden something bigger, and maybe they're hoping people will say that isn't so bad.
But I would remind the two of you that who was the president that deported more people than anyone else? Obama. Okay, I just want to remind you of that. It was a Democrat.
14 million?
It wasn't that much. It was like 2 million.
It was more than anyone else
so far.
at that point.
So far.
Deporting 14 million, twice the size of the Holocaust. Let's keep that number in mind.
The thing that's going to be bad is
that's not the point. It's Obama was the deporter in chief. We don't really know. I hope Trump doesn't do it though. I don't want anybody deported.
You should see who he's just appointed.
I don't want even criminals deported. They should be in jail here if they're criminals.
Well, they didn't commit crimes here.
If they've committed crimes here that would get them deported, why don't they
I think he's
go
talking
to jail
about
here?
people that are here from other countries that are criminals.
How would he even know if they're deported?
He's always said he knows that. He said they're sending their criminals. Well, how did he know that?
Yeah,
that's what he believes, that there's criminals that came into this country illegally. They're in with the other immigrants.
There are also, unfortunately, for all of us, people who are in this country illegally that have committed crimes too.
Well, there's some of those, not that many, but there's some.
Well, there's some, but I
think he's going to look for those, but I think he's looking for things like the M15 gang.
Yeah.
What's the big? It's those guys he's going to go after first, and he's going to get people thinking, oh, maybe he's not such a bad guy then, and then they'll build it up. The other thing that's going to be a problem, though, too, is many of these people have families in the United States. They might have a spouse that is not illegal at all.
Right.
And the question is, what's going to happen with them? We're not going to break up families? What are you going to do?
Yesterday, they're going to deport all of them, the whole family. They said, what are you going to do about separating families? He says, well, we're not going to separate them. We're going to deport all of them.
Yeah, but if they're U.S. citizens, kids, he can't do it.
Well, maybe they're not citizens, but they're not illegally
Yeah,
here
but if
either.
they're born here, they're citizens.
Oh, they claim they've got some legal loophole to get rid of
They're saying- yeah, they're saying-
maybe they'll try. But you know what, John? We're both attorneys. That's when you fight.
Oh,
if they're gonna,
with the
you know,
Republican appointees to the federal court by Donald Trump,
Then don't
who
you
just
fight, I'll fight.
exonerated him
Okay, right.
gave him immunity from crimes.
Yeah,
Give me a break.
This is what I'm going to do with my life. And it's always the same, regardless of who's in power. The work I've done in this community is going to continue, and what people will do who are really committed to this country will continue to fight whomever's in power.
Of course.
And that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter for me personally or for a committed American who will continue to
We
fight.
say that, but we've never, like John said, we've never had this situation before. You got a president now that
I
can
have.
do anything,
I have.
and even if it's illegal, it's okay.
Hey.
We've never had that before.
Yes, we have.
No, we have not.
we haven't.
Okay, all
The
right.
Supreme Court
You
just
wanna-
made that doctrine up out of thin air. It did not exist.
Yeah, but it existed when Obama.
No, it did not.
That is absolute
not.
disinformation spread
No, it
by
isn't.
Fox News. It wasn't
No, it
true.
isn't.
I looked at it. You had me look at it. It's wrong.
Okay,
it didn't
this
happen.
is what I'm talking about. President Obama assassinated U.S. citizens abroad. And was he prosecuted about that? No. We have faced the same situation
The
before.
Supreme Court would say that's okay.
And I fought then, and I'm going to fight now about it.
The Supreme Court would say that's okay.
Well, the court already said it
Or
about
even
him.
what they're actually saying is, even if it's not okay, he did it as part of his job, so
Yes.
it's okay.
under
Right.
completely
We've never had a
Right, so
president
this
under
is
that
the
before.
deal.
This
This
is-
is the deal. Guess what we do? All of us, if we're truly committed to the reshaping of this country in a decent fashion, we continue to fight no matter
Well, we
who's
have no
president.
choice. I think we have no choice.
Well, you do. You have.
But I'm just saying, things are different than what it was like even a year ago, thinking, oh, we'll just fight on.
we'll see.
You've got a president
We
with powers
will
that no
see.
president has ever had.
Okay.
And don't whitewash this with this line that it was the Democrats' fault. I mean, I'm not a Democrat.
I'm
But
not either.
don't-
Well, I
but
have
don't-
been.
Oh,
I am.
Kamala Harris this and Kamala Harris that. Give me a
I
break.
didn't say that.
Give me a
I
break.
didn't
What
say
these,
that.
these people
I did not
wore
say-
on their
John
sleeve what they were going to do in the American
John
police.
Franco, I did not say that.
74 million
I
people
think
said
people
it's okay with
voted
us.
against the Biden administration. I think that's what happened.
It's good that you did, but I think the idea that things are just going to be, we'll just continue to fight on.
I didn't say that.
We're in different territory than we were
and
even a
guess
year
what?
ago.
Guess what? We're in different territory. However, we continue our role, which is to fight power.
That's fine, but that doesn't
Okay.
say that's an answer. It's just
It
what you're
does
going to
give
do.
you an answer. It
What
gives
you're
me-
gonna do.
It
That
gives
was-
me the answer to what we should be doing as a committed American.
Well, when you get Trump appointees on the judiciary, you're dealing with a whole different
And
kettle of fish.
we've all thought about that too. I did.
Oh, different kettle of fish, man. And these people are going to be
Jesus.
embedded for decades.
Okay,
And
terrific.
decades.
All right.
And decades.
All right. So there's another whole issue though that I think people voted against. Regardless of no one even wants to talk about that, I think they're sick of all the woke stuff.
Well, they are, some of them.
And I think that's another reason they voted
Or they're
against
not
it.
more. Yeah, well, that's true. But that still doesn't mean the future looks like we just have to fight and it's
Did
going to
I
be
say
okay.
that?
Yeah, I think it's
Did I
fucked up.
say that?
You did.
I did not say it was going to be okay. Nothing has been okay in this country since after World War II. Nothing has been okay.
There's levels of not okay and there's levels of
Okay,
what this guy
that's
is going
you.
to bring.
We'll see. And it's increased. You're right. The levels of deception, the levels of wars, the levels of inflation, the levels of depression, everything has increased since 1945, and we are in a whole new ballgame.
Well, wait. You're not talking about this is worse. We've had situations worse than
I
the Great
said we are
Depression.
in a whole new ballgame, especially about war.
You're thinking, though, that the Depression economic situation now is worse than the Great Depression.
I didn't say that. I said we're in a
racial
whole
situation is
every-
worse than
I
say
said-
the 20s or 30s
I've said
or-
since 1945.
Yeah, so
Even
I'll tell you what.
1945.
I'm going back to the 30s and 20s and
1945
teens.
was the
Well,
perfect-
even prior to 1964.
Yeah.
Okay, the idea that I'm presenting is that after 1945, we've had nothing but continual wars. And that has increased. You're absolutely right. It's a whole new ballgame. And I'm determined that that new ballgame is not going to foil me, that's for sure.
I hope it doesn't foil any of us, but
Well,
it's not such an easy. It's not
well,
easy to see
well,
exactly where this is headed because this is
I
new.
think the view that I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything, but the view put forward by most of the media, the liberal media, is that this is a kind of a hopeless situation. It's not hopeless.
Oh, I don't think it's hopeless.
Okay, good.
But I don't
Okay.
think, I'd say, and just the idea that, oh, we'll fight, it'll be okay, it's going to take a lot more than that, because the foe is a lot more powerful than anything we've had before.
You know what it's going to take? A unified movement from the left. It's going to take what Bernie Sanders says, a rebuilding of the Democratic Party along decent lines.
Or maybe truly a third
Yes, or
party.
truly a third party, but that's impossible.
I don't think Bernie thinks even that the Democratic Party is quite rebuildable.
No,
at this point.
Bernie is outraged in a way,
Yeah.
as he should be.
Well, actually,
Well, let me rain on the parade. This again, I circle back to what this election shows is that the political culture of the United States is fundamentally conservative.
Yeah.
About lots of stuff,
there's always a complete double standard for even the liberals in the Democratic Party and then what the Republicans say. I mean, again, you compare, how Biden's record is so bad, the economy was so bad. Compared to
didn't say
what?
that.
You know what it's like under Ronald Reagan? High inflation and high unemployment. You know what it's like under Richard Nixon, particularly during his second term? We had inflation that was in double and triple digits.
That's when we went off the gold standard.
High unemployment. But it's sort of like, well, if it's the Republicans, it's okay. That they have a much lower bar than the Democrats, and that is to me the fundamental. What's really baked in here is the fundamental bias in the electorate, which is a fundamentally conservative bias, and frankly, a fundamentally racist and a fundamentally sexist.
and even
bias.
amongst groups that I think the Democrats relied on. For instance, a lot of men, even minority men, voted for Trump. Not all of them, but there's a conservative strain right through everything now.
Yep.
Okay, let me say one other thing. I heard an interesting statistic the other night, and that it was that 85% of Americans do not want boys in girls' sports. Do you realize how Trump hammered on that?
I know. That's what that goes back to. It's a conservative
That's what I'm
country.
saying. It was
It's
not.
a conservative country.
You want boys in girls' sports?
I don't particularly.
85% don't either, except that the Biden administration approved that.
But that's again.
I'm
I'd
telling
say
you,
that's a
there were
conservative issue, and the
other
public would
issues.
agree
There were
with you on that
other-
issue.
I
They
don't
would.
think it was a conservative
But the
issue at
question
all.
is, does that account for a 10 million
Could
vote
be.
drop in her turnout? No.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
I think wokeness
No.
had a lot to do with this
maybe.
election.
I think just Biden portrayed as being
Yeah.
woke did, whether he did or not, whether he was or not. But the idea that his administration was woke,
Yeah.
I think that does have that
Yes,
goes on my
thank
category
you.
of Biden was a big anchor
Yes, thank you.
against
Yeah, thank you.
moving forward for Harris. People thought that, and maybe in some ways he was. I think our statewide. If you want to talk about statewide politics, I think the same thing happened to Democrats statewide.
I do too.
They are
I do
definitely
too.
woke.
Yeah,
and
I
I
do
think
too.
they didn't get their asses kicked because they still won.
Oh, but
They lost ground, and they lost important
They
ground.
lost.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's a next reaction to a very woke
Look at
Democratic
the victory.
legislature.
Look at the victory of Phil Scott.
Yeah. I agree.
Every town.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
Well, he didn't have really serious competition, but
Well, the surprise would
How about David Zuckerman?
I'd say that's more of the surprise.
No,
but that shows what's really going on. I think more than the Scott thing.
This is what they were able to do here. They were able.
Here in Vermont, we're talking about.
What they were able to do with that was the high property tax issue.
Yeah.
And you have John Rogers and Phil Scott say, I'm against high property taxes. Did Phil Scott put on the table any plan to cure the? We've got a education finance system that was designed after the Brigham decision in 1999 that was put into place, and it's broken. It's not working. It's dysfunctional. Does anybody have a solution for that right now? Have they worked out the engineering of this thing and say how we're going to fix this? No. Phil Scott doesn't have anything on the table. John Rogers doesn't have anything on the table. John Rogers ran against, I'm against high property taxes, and David Zuckerman is some out-of-state rich kid who came to Vermont, and now he's claiming he's doing good things.
Something else,
but he doesn't have your. Yeah, I know what that was. He doesn't have your interest in mind. And Phil Scott played that to the max.
Yep.
If you recall, at the end of the legislative session, there's supposed to be this big meeting where they're going to come together and come up with a bipartisan solution to get us through this year. And so all the Democratic leaders went to the governor's office to meet with him about that. Phil Scott didn't show up. He didn't show up. He sent his underlings. Well, what that meant is he wasn't serious about talking about it because he didn't have anything to offer. They don't. Here's the big problem. The two tandem things in Vermont are the cost of health care and the cost of education. And neither party has a solution to that.
True.
The architecture for health care was developed under Peter Shumlin when they were thinking about single payer and they developed the Green Mountain Care Board. That is completely broken.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's completely
Yeah, it's
broken.
gone. I know. I was in the legislature when that happened.
And the education finance system that was designed in 1999 and 2000 as a result of the Brigham decision is now broken. It is broken. Structurally, it's broken. And nobody has a fix right now. And Phil Scott, the Republicans in the legislature have caught the car. They're like the dog that caught the car.
Well, but yes and no. I think Phil Scott, most people think of him as, he hasn't articulated an answer for education. They don't know that. But he knows that he's willing to say this or that costs too much and try and stop it.
Yeah.
That's what they liked. Well, it doesn't have to be the education only, but there's other things where Phil Scott, like, what's the energy, the clean energy rules that are going through? He says they're too expensive. I suspect if he has a chance, he'll veto it. That's what people see, that he will at least try to put the brakes on. He doesn't have to have all the answers because the other side doesn't have any answers either. But they do see him as someone who will try to put the brakes on. And I think that's why he's very popular. And you look at a Democratic legislature, which doesn't seem to have any brakes at all.
Here's my frustration.
Right.
Nobody in either party has a solution to either one.
Right.
They don't.
Right. And
But you got to vote
right.
for somebody.
Right.
Or you don't vote at all. So who do you vote for? The guy that might try and put the brakes on, or the ones that I say don't have any brakes at all? You're going to vote for the guy that tries. And
Okay,
that's what he's getting credit for. He's no genius that has all the answers.
No.
And I don't think people expect him to. But what they do expect is if there's a chance to say no to this that's going to increase taxes or no to that, he will try to do it. I think that's why he won.
But there was another thing. It was his ad. Did you see his ad? It was so clever.
I didn't see any of his TV stuff.
I saw his ad, and he basically said, "Vote for common sense." Wow, and get other people like me who believe in common sense. It was very clever.
Well,
it was
and
very
that's how,
clever.
I think that's, again, you don't have to have any of the answers.
Right.
But I think if you had to make a choice, you would say, okay, common sense. He's probably Scott, and it's not these guys.
Yeah, right.
That's all. That's how he wins.
Right. But again,
And he's not a bad guy. I mean,
No.
if we didn't have him, I think I'm glad that the supermajority is gone because I think there's nothing worse than being ruled by a legislature. That's the worst situation. When does that ever work? When has a legislative body ever ruled and not ended up with the French Revolution or
That's true.
Stalin or something?
Hey, Stalin was not ruled by any legislature.
Well, but when he got in, he came to power because there was nobody. There was a legislator, or what do they call them back then?
Duma.
There's a name for
The
whatever
Duma.
they had. I don't know. But the idea that legislatures are going to win, Gingrich tried that even back with Clinton's days, that Congress was going to take over and run. That doesn't work. That's not even close to working. And what you usually end up with often is something much, much worse than
What you're saying is like mob rule.
they're not a mob, but it's
Sort of.
it's different. When they think that a supermajority is going to run the state, that's terrible. The legislature is not fit to be running anything. They can pass laws, and that's their job. But if they're going to somehow override a veto of a governor who's got to actually make things happen, that's not a good situation. Once in a while, maybe there's a need for an override, but supermajority like that, I'm glad it's gone.
Okay,
Everyone's got to work to compromise now. Nobody can just, especially legislators, dictate things.
This is obviously a very long conversation.
Yeah.
We perhaps should review it at another time
Well,
when it's less heated. Okay.
I want to add to that now's the time where they've got to come up. Somebody's got to come up and say nobody has a fix for the two major policy problems in Vermont right now. I mean, healthcare spending.
I know.
God, it is the level of healthcare. The cost of a Obamacare Gold plan is in Vermont is twice the cost of it in the United States. The average cost to educate a pupil in Vermont is twice the average.
Yeah,
cost
we're like
in
at the
United
high
States.
end of all
Why?
these things.
Somebody needs to go in and do an analysis of why.
Because we don't have enough people.
No, but why? Why? What adjustments have
that's
other
the
other parts of the country made? What adjustments have other countries made? They don't face this problem. We're all under Obamacare. Why does Obamacare cost twice as much in Vermont as it does in the national average? Healthcare spending prior to year 2000, Vermont used to be below average.
Yeah.
We used to be our per capita healthcare spending used to be 17% below average. And one of the times when that completely went off the scale was during Jim Douglas. It went crazy and it was like as long as it wasn't taxes, as long as it was off budget, as long as it was your health insurance premiums and not your property taxes or your state taxes, it was okay. That was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
That was a catastrophe.
And if you think we're small, I don't think for the healthcare thing, the smallness doesn't make any sense at all. If you took Vermont and said, okay, here's Vermont, 5 Vermonts make up 1 Kansas or something like that. Kansas doesn't have that problem, though. We're just a part of of another state. The healthcare thing is crazy.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have that at all. I don't care how big or small we are.
Well, you guys
it's a very
are,
localized thing. There's doctors and there's local communities. Why is ours out of control?
We all at one point, me too, were advocates of a single-payer system, and that was really
I don't know that.
But we don't have that.
No, I know it. It got defeated when.
Now it's hard to know, what's going to work. We are completely out of whack with things, and our education
I'll
system.
tell you one thing that would be really nice, and that is to cut the military budget and put some of that money into our own country. Like, isn't that a terrific idea?
You know what's going to happen, though.
Hey, I want to say one other thing
I'm
about
saying
that.
You're wrong.
And this is one thing I mean. The best health care in the world would be to stop war.
Maybe. No, people are still going to get sick, the war or not. But
yeah, but they don't get dead as easy.
The sad part about it is with the military, don't forget the way our budget's working out. We are spending money for the most part that we don't even have.
I know.
So what's going to happen is
they're
going to go in there, they're going to cut, but there's not going to be, they're going to cut what we don't have. They're not going to, the money that we have to spend is going to stay this.
Yeah, but they're not going to cut the military, unfortunately.
Maybe they won't, but I'm just saying, the idea that if we didn't do this, we would do that, it's never going to work that way. It never does. They cut something, since it's all funny money anyway, it's not going to come back somewhere else.
We became a permanent war state in 1945. That's what I meant.
Yeah, well, maybe we have.
We didn't go to peace after the Second World War. We went still to war. That was the first time that it happened. It did not happen after World War I. It happened after World War II. We became an economy that was based on military spending.
Yeah.
And that is really, really one of the problems. That is exactly why I could not support the Biden administration.
And you know who called that out in 1961?
Eisenhower.
I know it. He did. He gave a brilliant, after though he had caused a lot of wars, like for instance in Iran.
He wasn't talking about war. He was talking about the war economy.
War economy. Yeah. He was the one that he coined the term military-industrial complex.
I know. He warned against it.
Yep. And
he warned against it not only financially, but because it would lead to a loss of liberty, which it also has done.
He also was in the minority in the military that did not believe that the atomic bomb should be used.
I know. And guess who did it? Harry Truman, a Democrat.
No.
I'm not a Republican either. I am a fierce independent. So I think that maybe this could be a continuing discussion. I hope we have to.
Well, I guess we don't. We're going to see. We don't.
Trump
has not done anything yet, so we don't know what's going to happen. We think we know.
But we have to keep on it.
Oh, I agree.
We have to keep on it.
But don't forget, you've got someone who's going to really keep on those that are trying to keep on.
We have to keep on. We also have to keep on all administrations. Okay, that's my view. Of course, I don't know what your view is exactly about that.
I still want to know what happened to the 10 million votes.
And I want to, frankly, rebuild the Democratic Party or a third party under the. I mean, I was always in favor of Bernie. Why can't he be our leader to rebuild a decent, either third party or a decent Democratic Party?
I think he sort of could, except he's old.
83
So
years
what?
old.
He's old. He's right. If you're old and right, you can do it.
It's too much energy. I don't think he's got it.
Well, you're not.
He's going to have to try. Maybe he should try.
You're not going to say that Bernie has no energy. I hope.
No, but it's not. It's not the Bernie of even 10 years ago. To do what has to be done.
None of us are. Look at us.
To do what has to be done is going to take energy like almost nobody has at this point. You got
I have it.
Someone. Well.
I have it. So okay, all right. So we should quit though and be back again in a month or so, right?
Yeah, when the trains start coming into and herding people into detention camps.
Well, probably I'd be the first one to go. So wish me goodbye. Bye.
Well, just one thing I think they are going to try and do. I think they're going to do piecemeal. They're going to look at the so-called sanctuary cities.
Yep.
That's where they're going first.
We're not one though.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
No,
Yes,
I don't think we ever passed it.
Yeah.
Sure we are.
Okay, well, let's check the record because I was involved in that.
See something happening in Burlington and Philadelphia and San Francisco,
please,
whatever, New York.
Please,
That's
I was
what's
part
going to
of
happen.
that struggle. As far as I know, it never passed. You might be right. Okay, so we'll
You were
see
against
in a
being a
month.
sanctuary city?
No, I want it to be a sanctuary city, and I don't believe it passed. Is what I'm saying. I wish we were a sanctuary city because I work at a place where there are a lot of immigrants.
Well, I think they're going to come.
And I want this to be a sanctuary city.
That's
I
where they're
don't
coming
believe
first.
it is. I do
If
not
we are,
believe
they'll be
it is.
here. If they're not,
okay, check it out for next time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye.